We are officially 1 week into the offseason for the Carolina Panthers, and it's been a busy week. So if you have not had a chance to tune in to any of my other videos and content, I said, you know what? It's time for us to make a recap of everything that's happened this week. And it has been a short week, but we've had some firings. We know about free agents, and we've also got a few players on the practice squad that were signed to future contracts. We also need to talk about the NFL calendar when it comes to free agency, the fifth year option, also who is eligible for the fifth year option for the Carolina Panthers. There's a lot to get into. So let's go ahead and dive right in. First of all, if you have not seen or heard, Carolina Panthers made a decision to retain Ejiro Evero. And I would like to say it comes with mixed opinions, but in the instances that I've seen, it's a lot of fans that are frustrated, and it feels like a very short leash for Ejiro Evero next year. Now, to compensate for that, it's something that we expected to see, and that is people underneath Ejiro Evero getting fired. So you have, excuse me, the secondary coach, Bert Watts, outside linebacker coach, Tim Lukaba, and quality control coach, Bobby Maffei. So those are your three coaches that were let go. We have not heard of any candidates or replacements. Remember, a lot of guys are still in the playoffs, at least 14 teams. No idea who they're going to look for now. I would feel like as we go through this change that Dave Canales may have more hand in this. Remember, this was Ejiro Evero staff coming in. There were no changes from last year over to this year. So it seems like we're going to find some change. And some people are already making a statement around, hey, what if Ejiro Evero goes out there next year just bombs and he is terrible? Which, I mean, given what we've seen the past 2 years, I don't think that that's necessarily a reach. In the event that happens, what if Dave Canales is going to pick out his defensive line coach or secondary coach as someone that could potentially take over the defense in the event that they fire Ejiro Evero midseason? And I think that's a real possibility. When we talk about Ejiro Evero, it's wild to see how it's not really wild. This is the business of the NFL. It's a, what have you done for me lately, league? You go back to the last two offseason with Ejiro Evero, he was interviewing for head coaching gigs all across. Didn't pan out, but everyone talked about him being this new upcoming coach who's destined to be a head coach, and people can't wait until he becomes a head coach. And now it has been complete crickets. We've heard all the openings in the NFL. I've followed who's interviewing who. Teams are posting about it on their socials, and we have yet to see Ejiro Evero's name. I even do a search just to make sure I don't miss something, but it's not happening. So it feels like the spark that was there has simmered down because I think teams have realized, like, yeah, it was actually pretty darn bad. It absolutely was. So that's probably the biggest news as far as the coaching situation in Carolina and the resulting firings that have occurred. So, of course, throughout the offseason, we are going to continue to keep you updated on everything with the Carolina Panthers. Now, if you've not seen the other video, I put together a recap of all the free agents for the Carolina Panthers, and I think it comes out to 28. That's a mixture of restricted, unrestricted, and exclusive rights free agents. Pairing along with that, we do have, as I mentioned, a few guys that were signed to future contracts. And I'm not going to get too in the weeds. I mean, some of these guys did see the field this season, but I'm not going to get into the weeds of breaking these guys down right now because really what we are building is the 90-man roster. Like it's so funny. You get to the end of the season, and I know during the season you carry your 53 in your practice squad. Season ends, now you're trying to sign guys to future contracts that you want to take into training camp. So maybe there was somebody out there that looked really good. You got to see them a little bit. You want to keep developing them and bring them along and see if they can make the leap. So starting here, we have tight end Jordan Matthews, who, like, this guy's been up and down on the practice squad all year. He is a little bit older, former wide receiver, but I like what he brings from a culture perspective. If you haven't followed, also go out and read Mike Hayes' piece that he did on him. It's very, very worth the read. Brandon Walton, who's an offensive tackle, Jatari Carter, who's a guard. Andrew Rame, center. So technically, he's the only center on the roster right now under contract. Dominique Daphne, who's a tight end. Dax Milne, who's a wide receiver. TJ Luther, who's a wide receiver. Running back, Imani Bailey. Outside linebacker, Thomas Nkum, and another outside linebacker, Kenny Dyson. So those are the players signed to future and reserves. Like I mentioned, you can go out, take a look at the free agent video. You can search Panthers.com, look at all the available free agents. And speaking of free agency, we really aren't going to know exactly what's going to happen until the tampering period happens. And that's a very short window for those who don't know. Now, I know it feels like things happen before that. We may get rumors. You technically could have trades before or trade terms, but things aren't going to be executed until you get into the new year, the new league year. But if you're following the NFL calendar, I guess let's call out a few important dates. The East-West Shrine Bowl, January 30th. Again, a lot of prospects going there. The Senior Bowl, February 1st. And if you're into the Pro Bowl games, those are February 2nd. Super Bowl, February 9th. On February 18th, beginning at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, clubs may designate a franchise or transition player. For me, when I look at the free agents on the Carolina Panthers roster, I don't see anyone on this list that's worthy of a franchise tag this year. So unlike last year where we had Brian Burns, doesn't seem like the Carolina Panthers are going to be looking to tag a player. That's my personal opinion. Following that, February 24th through March 3rd, the NFL Scouting Combine at Lucas Oil Stadium. Talked about the franchise tag designation. The deadline to complete the tag is February 4th. Then on March 10th at 12 o'clock, the legal tampering period opens up. And March 12th, no prospective unrestricted free agents can execute a contract with a new club until 4 p.m. on March 12th. So March 12th is really, I guess March 10th through the 12th, we'll start to get a general idea. And I've been following this for 2 years with the Carolina Panthers and the NFL in general. We usually see a good bunch of free agents signed within that first week. Things will taper off. We'll still see some guys, some veterans, but usually the bulk of the free agency signings are going to be during that period. Now, we can look ahead at the roster construction and maybe look at some cuts. And I don't know if the Panthers are going to want to cut players this early in the process once the new league year starts. That's always a possibility. And remember with the post June 1st cut, you can actually designate 2 players to be post June 1st cuts, even though you're making them prior to the June 1st date. And it all has to do with salary cap numbers, makes it much more beneficial for the team. Anyways, new league year starts on March 12th, the day before my birthday, at 4 p.m. And that's also when the trading period opens. So again, you will hear about trades and trade rumors. Those things could be finalized, especially think about the Carolina Panthers and a Garrett Wilson proposal, a Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill not as much momentum, but definitely Garrett Wilson seems to be one of the topics that we're going to have. So that's always a possibility. Outside of that, then we'll move into, of course, the league annual meetings, March 30th through April 2nd. I know there's always wild proposals. I think one of the biggest proposals right now that's on the table, and it's been on the table, is the elimination of the onside kick in favor of like a 20-yard play in order to get the ball back. So we'll hear the rumblings of what's going to transpire. Remember this past year, the change in the kickoff rules, that was the biggest one, the hip drop tackle. So any new thing that's going to come through likely during the league meetings in early spring, we'll get a better sense of that. After that, teams are able to begin their offseason programs. That's probably the next biggest date on the calendar, which is April 21st. We have the draft April 24th through the 26th. That's in Green Bay. And then comes May 1st. May 1st is the deadline to exercise the 5th-year option for the Carolina Panthers. And this is from the 2022 NFL Draft. Remember, you can only execute or you're provided a 5th-year option on players selected in the first round, you can go back to the 2022 NFL Draft. That was Ickey Ekwonu. So, if the Panthers choose not to exercise the fifth-year option on Ickey Ekwonu, he would become a free agent at the end of the 2025-2026 season. Personally, I'm in favor of extending him. I think he had a much better third-year season, junior season, if you want to call it, with the Carolina Panthers. Run blocking is one of the best. I know there are some misses in his protection, and some people may want more out of it, but for the Carolina Panthers, given the stability that we've seen along the offensive line, I think it makes sense for them to bring him back. Following that, there'll be a designation for rookie minicamp. It'll be either May 2nd through the 5th or May 9th through the 12th. And then the NFL Players Association rookie premiere is May 14th. Spring league meeting for coaches is May 20th through the 21st. And then, I mean, for me, that's about as far as we are going to get in it today. But that's really the latest news for the Carolina Panthers. I will tell you, as we move into the part of the offseason where we're talking about drafts and profiles and tracking who the Carolina Panthers have met with, Ryan Fowler of ESPN has reported 2 meetings for the Carolina Panthers. And actually, I'm saying he's with ESPN. Let me verify. With just kidding, the Draft Network. So excuse me, confusing him with Jeremy Fowler. Ryan Fowler has reported that the Carolina Panthers have met with linebacker Nick Jackson. This was at the Hula Bowl. And so he is ranked second in FBS history with 547 tackles. We know we can use another linebacker. And Virginia Tech wide receiver Ali Jennings. He's actually played in college for 6 years, started in 2019, the COVID year, bounced around from West Virginia, Old Dominion, and Virginia Tech, kind of staying in that territory. Had a really good season with Old Dominion 3 years ago. Since then, it's kind of fallen off. I know he's battled some injuries. But 2 position groups. And if you're like me and you want to create your draft board and draft prospects, these little tidbits of information are really important because they help you understand who the Panthers are talking to. Most times what we see is that the Panthers are going to draft the players they talk to and they have met. We're not going to get every report. We're not going to know every single meeting that happens, but it does help you if you're trying to build this out for yourself. And speaking of that, I went back and looked, and it was funny. I was thinking through this past offseason, speaking of the defensive linebackers, and Justin Strand. Like, I don't know how many people remember this, and I'm probably pronouncing his last name wrong, but the linebacker for Denver, Dan Morgan tried. Dan Morgan, I mean, I guess we had essentially a commitment from him, if you want to call it that. And then he made a decision to go back to Denver, which of course worked out for him. But I think Dan Morgan was doing his best to bring in some really good linebackers that had played in a Jerry Evero's system. But he said, you know what? I like it in Denver. I'm going to go back there. Just thought I'd bring up that tidbit. He did play football at Wake Forest too. Anyways, folks, as we get into the offseason, I'll continue to update you. We'll do draft boards. Unfortunately for Carolina Panthers fans, if you think Abdul Carter is going to be available at pick number 8, I hate to tell you that's not the case. Fantastic performance the other night. We'll get into the college football playoff in a little bit. Until then, this is Carolina Dad. Y'all have a good one.